One is you get a tracker, right? And you
Mm.
start tracking your sleep and looking at the metrics that they provide within the tracking system. So let's talk about that for a half a second here, right?
Sure.
So I'm not a big fan of trackers when they go to that depth of tracking because the accuracy is off significantly usually. And so one of the things that people don't know is when you reach age 55, in the sleep laboratory world, we actually change the rules of how we score your brain waves based on your age. I can assure you there's not a tracker out there that does this. So for folks who are my age and older who are thinking about sleep tracking, number one, to please don't get stuck on a number, right? So many people come up to me like, Dr. Breus, I only get 14 minutes of deep sleep, right? So what I tell people is, hey, I don't care. What did you get the night before? They say 14 minutes. I say, what did you get the night before that? They say 14 minutes. I said, perfect. I said, here's the good news is your tracker is being consistently inaccurate. So when it's 14 minutes one night and 407 the next, that's when I want to know what's going on. So we're really looking for the delta or the change. And you should only look at your sleep data, by the way, once a week. You should not look at it every single morning. There's no value in doing something like that at all you're going to do is piss yourself off, right? So here's what ends up happening. Like, so I have an Aura ring, and I used to look at my Aura score every single morning thinking and I woke up mornings and I felt great, and my Aura score was terrible. And it just was a downer for the day. So I learned pretty quickly that it's much better to look at it as a week-long trend to really start to understand where you are. And the only thing that you're honestly interested in is consistency.
Hello, Dr. Breus. You are the sleep doctor and the author of 5 books on sleep, the most recent of which is Sleep, Drink, Breathe, released on December the 4th, which was yesterday as we're recording. So welcome to Modern Healthspan, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Are you kidding? Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So I had a look at the book Sleep, Drink, Breathe,
Yep.
and those are the 3 things that you think, those are the basics that we
Yep.
have to
I
get
know where you're
right.
going. Yeah.
So kind of why those 3? I mean, don't we do them all the time anyway?
Right. Right.
Right.
So that's the right question to ask. And that's the number one question that everybody's asking me. And so here's how I like to look at that from an analogy standpoint. So let's say that you are a runner, right? And you're running along and you have a normal pace, but you want to have a better pace. You want to actually get more efficiency out of your run. You want your muscles to work better. You want them to get stronger. You're still running, by the way. But if somebody just told you how to change your form or how to accelerate more, maybe change your nutrition a bit, all of a sudden now you're running faster, right? Doesn't mean you never knew how to run, just means you're doing it more efficiently, more effectively, probably getting you closer to your goals. The same is true with these 3 things. And to be fair, it was a weird sort of thing that happened. I was reading a book. A friend of mine wrote a book called Life Gives to the Giver. His name's Joe Polish. And he was talking about this idea of what he called dominoes. So he said, a domino is a skill that you acquire that once you have it, it knocks over into other things. And then all of a sudden you're doing all kinds of great things. So it's like this fundamental aspect to something much greater. So I'm sitting there and I was like, I wonder what the dominoes of wellness would be, right? And so I started thinking about that, like, because I mean, like, I'm into this space, I'm a sleep doctor, I'm into this space, like I'm interested in longevity, I'm interested in like how to age well, all these type of things. And so started looking at it and I was like, well, what are the 3 things that you pretty much have to do every single day? I like the number 3, right? And so, sleep had to be one because I'm the sleep doctor, right? But 2 was, hydration, right? So I really took a hard line look at hydration. Now, I'd always known that hydration, because I'm a runner and I like to do cardio, I've always been somebody who's thought about my water intake and things. And as I've gotten older, I've definitely started to notice that I require a little bit more water. And if I have water too late in the day, I get up in the middle of the night to pee, and that's not a lot of fun, right? So it's like I started to get a real interest in what is hydration, how does it work, how can I do it more effectively, and I've learned quite a few things. Also, as my body has gotten older, it doesn't absorb water as well. It doesn't absorb anything as well. So that in and of itself was also interesting things to think about. So you start to really understand more about hydration. And what turns out that I learned about hydration is it's all about salt and water in your system. That's really what it's about. And so maintaining those two things, and that your body goes through a whole different things to do that, becomes important. And for example, if you've got 56-year-old kidneys like I do, right, they don't work necessarily as well as 25-year-old kidneys. And so I tell people all the time that if you can just tweak a few things as you age and age well, then basically you can kind of keep Father Time behind you rather than in front of you. Which could be valuable. As far as the breathing thing was concerned, that was the one that a lot of people like. Come on, I breathe just fine, Michael. Like, what are you talking about? And so, number one, as a sleep specialist, I've been involved in dealing with patients with sleep apnea, which is the stopping of breathing, for my entire career. So breathing is very something that I think about a lot all the time. I think about respiration. I think about how are people respiring, what's going on. Here's what's interesting. Snoring, right? That's a big one that is big into sleep and breathing and things like that. You start to really think about it. So I started to think about, okay, well, air quality. That turns out to be a big deal, right? And how does that have anything to do with sleep? Well, what's the one room that you're in longest in your house? Well, it's your bedroom, right? So shouldn't the air quality, what you're consuming, be a better there than anywhere else? Yeah. So one of the sections in the book, we look at air quality and what are good air filters, small air filters that you can put into it. And not like you have to change your HVAC system. I'm saying on Amazon for $30, I can show you what's a good air filter that you can have in your bedroom, right? So they're very practical things on the air side of things, but also, I'll be honest with you, I had to, later on in my career, I've developed some anxiety. And one of the ways I handle my anxiety is through breath work. So there's meditation, which is interesting, and I've learned a lot about that, and we talk about that in the book too. But breathing in particular, many people don't know this, but the rate at which you breathe can change, turn on or off all kinds of hormones in your body, ones that make you excited and ones that make you relaxed. So what I'm talking about here is what's called the central nervous system, which is broken down into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. It's your get up and go, right? The parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest. Okay. So what you say, Michael, come on, this is an anatomy lesson. What are you talking about here? So breathing, when you breathe in a particular way, you can turn on the rest and digest. That gets really interesting when you wake up in the middle of the night and can't fall back to sleep, right? So it's very interesting when you start to look at all three of these. They're all on top of each other. They all interact with each other. And as we get older, they're all going to become more and more important. So the goal of the book, I think, really was as a starting point. Because here's the other thing that's kind of strange. Well, not strange, but I think it's just the facts, is I don't know where to start with this wellness journey. Like, do you go buy a green drink? Do you go have a sauna? Do you go onto the cold plunge? Do you buy a treadmill? Do you join a gym? Like, there's so many, you know what I mean? Different things. What I like about this is kind of a good starting line, because if you sleep and you hydrate and you breathe well, every single other thing that you want to do in the world of wellness will work better, right? So let's say your wellness journey is you want to lose a little bit of weight, right? We know that hydration, breathing, and sleep all directly affect the hormones that drive appetite and hunger, right? There's a direct connection there, right? Let's say that your wellness journey isn't weight driven, it's movement driven. You want to be able to move better. You want to be able to do a dance class, a yoga class. You maybe want to go for walks with your kids or your grandkids, whatever it is, right? Maybe you want to go for a run. Maybe you want to do a marathon. Who knows, right? If you want to do all of that stuff, you can't do any of that without sleep, right? And if you're not hydrated, forget it. And breathing really helps you understand the length of time that you can exercise, right? So if you're exercising and your breathing is getting very, very rapid, you're going to get out of breath, and then it's going to stop the activity, right? But if you know how to breathe appropriately, you can actually extend the activity. So let's say you're playing with your kids or playing with your grandkids, and all of a sudden you find you're out of breath all the time. Some of the very simple techniques in my book are teaching people how to breathe better, and then that extends time with their kids or their grandkids. Like, that's what we're talking about here. We're really talking about tweaking some of these behaviors that are already so fundamental to what you're doing.
There were a number of things I'd like to go back to there, but you had
Sure.
sleep as the first domino Is that because you're the
Yep.
sleep doctor, or is that because it is the first domino?
Well, that's a fair question. I think I put it up there because I'm the sleep doctor, if you want to know the truth of the matter. But because you can't have sleep without hydration or
Mm.
breathing, but you can breathe, do those others without sleep. So I think maybe I just put it up there because I like it the most. But yeah, I think that if I had to choose, breathing is clearly the one that we all want to get better and better at. Because
Mm.
it directly affects our heart and that directly affects our anxiety and a whole host of other things.
You said you're a runner. This is a bit of a diversion, but you're a runner. Do you
Sure.
find that your breathing improves your running? I mean, if you do practice breathing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So in the book, I actually give diaphragm exercises that you can do. So breathing exercises to help strengthen the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles here, which are the ones that help with breathing. So yeah, absolutely. What I have definitely discovered is breath work when I'm not doing cardio absolutely affects, in a positive way, breath work when I am doing cardio, whatever the
Okay,
cardio might be. And that could be yoga, that could be dance, that could be, whatever.
right. Excellent. I have to try some of that.
Yeah.
So, uh, so,
Mhm.
but so if we looked at sleep, so sleep is can be more complicated than just time in bed, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so if we were to think about sleep quality, especially sleep quality as we get older,
Correct.
so what kind of thing? So I guess one thing is sleep architecture. What,
Mhm.
how would we measure sleep? What are the things that we would measure within sleep if we were wanted to see how good our sleep was?
So I think there's a couple of different ways to go about answering this question. One is you get a tracker, right? And you
Mm.
start tracking your sleep and looking at the metrics that they provide within the tracking system. So let's talk about that for a half a second here, right? So I'm not a big fan of trackers when they go to that depth of tracking because the accuracy is off significantly usually. And so one of the things that people don't know is when you reach age 55, in the sleep laboratory world, we actually change the rules of how we score your brain waves based on your age. I can assure you there's not a tracker out there that does this. So for folks who are my age and older who are thinking about sleep tracking, number one, to please don't get stuck on a number, right? So many people come up to me like, Dr. Breus, I only get 14 minutes of deep sleep, right? So what I tell people is, hey, I don't care. What did you get the night before? They say 14 minutes. I say, what did you get the night before that? They say 14 minutes. I said, perfect. I said, here's the good news is your tracker is being consistently inaccurate. So when it's 14 minutes one night and 407 the next, that's when I want to know what's going on. So we're really looking for the delta or the change. And you should only look at your sleep data, by the way, once a week. You should not look at it every single morning. There's no value in doing something like that at all you're going to do is piss yourself off, right? So here's what ends up happening. Like, so I have an Aura ring and I used to look at my Aura score every single morning thinking and I woke up mornings and I felt great and my Aura score was terrible. And it just was a downer for the day. So I learned pretty quickly that it's much better to look at it as a week-long trend to really start to understand where you are. And the only thing that you're honestly interested in is consistency, right? So that's really one of the biggest things that I try to tell people from a what are you looking for? Now, there's a whole second category, which is when you wake up, how do you feel? Okay. If you don't feel good, you probably didn't sleep well, right? It doesn't take rocket science to figure that out, right? And so there's also a subjective component, which is when I wake up in the morning and I've had, a minute or two to clear my head, do I feel rested? If I don't, then there's a quality problem, right? And if there's a quality sleep problem, one of the things I talk about in the book is sleep problems don't just magically go away. Okay. If you're not sleeping well, there's a reason. And now it could be biology or it could be psychology, right? So it could be that you have something going on from a particular system in your body that is causing a sleep disruption, right? And so that could be something like sleep apnea, it could be narcolepsy, it could be restless leg syndrome, right? Or something could be going on your psychology side of your brain, right? And that's where a lot of insomnia comes from, the inability to fall asleep, the inability to stay asleep, or the inability to fall back to sleep in the middle of the night, right? So sleep problems do not magically disappear, okay? But a lot of people think, oh, I got 4 kids. That's why I'm so tired all the time. No, that's not how it works. Okay. To be clear, this unit, your body will recover at night if you allow it to. So people have to stop putting impediments, kind of in the way. And so, again, when I'm looking at how do I understand how well am I sleeping? The things I think people need to think through are if you want to have a tracker, fine. I personally tell all my patients to use a paper and pencil sleep diary. I have them write down what time they got in bed, and then they don't fill out anything else until the morning. And then they guesstimate how long did they think it took them to fall asleep? What time did they wake up? Did they use an alarm? How many times did they wake up throughout the night? And what was the length of each one of those awakenings? That's really the only information that I need because from there I can behaviorally teach them how to change their sleep cycles if they want. So I don't want everybody thinking, oh, I got to go out and buy a $400 sleep tracker and I have to, make sure that I'm getting all this done. The good news is you can, and you can learn a lot about your sleep. You can also drive yourself a little crazy with doing all that. But what I would say is, again, your body knows best in most cases. You are the best doctor in the room, right? And so when you wake up and you don't feel good, there's something going on. Take a look at it.
The holiday season, while joyful, can be incredibly demanding. From hectic schedules to increased social obligations, stress can take a toll on our well-being. Magnesium plays a crucial role in managing stress and promoting relaxation. However, many individuals are deficient, leading to symptoms like fatigue, poor sleep, and increased anxiety. Magnesium Breakthrough from BiOptimizers offers a comprehensive solution. The unique blend of magnesium citrate, glycinate, taurate, and more ensures maximum absorption and utilization by our cells. By replenishing your magnesium levels, you can enhance your body's ability to cope with stress, improve sleep quality, and maintain a calm, balanced mood. It's a great gift for yourself or a loved one this holiday season. To experience the benefits of Magnesium Breakthrough and take advantage of an exclusive $10 discount, go to bioptimizers.com/modern and use promo code MODERN10. By subscribing, you'll secure a consistent supply while enjoying discounts and complimentary gifts. Thank you for your support. If you are like that, can you figure out what's going wrong? So you wake up, you don't feel good. Can you figure out what's going wrong with the sleep tracker, or how would that help?
Great question. So depends on the tracker. So as an example, the Apple Watch adds a feature to it that looks at oxygen. And so, for example, if all of a sudden you're getting crappy sleep and it says to you, hey, your oxygen is low at night, you may have just figured something out, which is you could probably have sleep apnea. So then it's probably worth going and getting a sleep test for it. Aura doesn't offer that feature, although what it does tell you is it does tell you total oxygenation across the night. So sometimes you can get a little bit more information from that. But to be clear, neither one of these devices is designed to diagnose sleep apnea. That's a medical test. And that's something that you should actually talk to your doctor about. Now, I will tell you something that's kind of interesting. So it used to be that when you wanted to get a sleep study, so when I was practicing back in Georgia, and even when I was practicing in Scottsdale, Arizona, here's how it would work: is you'd come into my office and I'd say, okay, I think you got sleep apnea. I'm just going to send you for a sleep study. Well, first of all, it would take a month to get you in because there'd be a wait for the lab. Then once we got you in, you'd come in, we'd put 27 electrodes all over your head, right, and your body. You'd sleep in a room with a camera on you so we could monitor you the whole time. Then the next day, you'd produce a record, about 1,000 pages of information. It would take us about 4 days to score it. Seriously, we finally got to the point where we could electronically score it, which made things much easier. But when I first started, it was all paper. You'd come back in, I'd tell you your diagnosis, then I'd have to send you back to the lab to do a second study with the treatment so I could see if the treatment worked. The whole process would take maybe 2 months, right? Ever since COVID, everything is done much quicker and much easier. So now you can do it all through telemedicine. Here's the crazy part. It costs a grand total of $200 if you want to do it, and your insurance might cover it as well. We actually sell them on my website on thesleepdoctor.com. You can go, and what happens is you click the button and all of a sudden you make an appointment with a doctor You do a teleconsult, like a Zoom consult, right? Where you talk to the doctor. They say, hey, I think you got this. I think you got that. They push a button and then they send a test to your home in the mail, right? You get it. You put it on your wrist with a little thing on your finger. That's it. You go to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, the information Bluetooths over to your phone. Then the phone sends it to the cloud to this group. They read it. The next day, you get on the online, do another Zoom consult. The doctor's got your data. You actually can throw the device away; it's disposable. And you get on with your doctor, and he tells you exactly what's going on and what to do next. And that takes 3 days from 7 weeks.
That's cool.
So, isn't that cool?
Yeah. And so we were talking to someone, he was talking about dementia and the onset of dementia. So how many, he said like a very large number of people over 50 have sleep apnea, they just don't know that.
Yeah.
What would
Correct.
your kind of estimate of that be? I mean, should people be getting this test?
Oh, absolutely, they should. Here's what I'll tell you is we think somewhere between 18 and 20% of the population, so that's 1 in 5 people, have some form of sleep apnea. So that's a massive, massive number. And so to link it back to dementia and Alzheimer's, here's what's interesting. And this is actually kind of speaks a little bit to the sleep tracking of it all, is during stage 3 and 4 sleep, there's something called the glymphatic system that opens and operates. And what it is it's kind of like a waste management system of the brain, like a garbage truck. It comes in and it scoops out all of these very specific proteins. So when you make a decision, when you're driving a car, when you're doing all these things that require brain work, the electricity that's going through your brain creates these proteins and they accumulate in your brain. And if something doesn't take out the trash, so to speak, or what we call brain dirt, if they don't take all of that out of there, right, it accumulates and it wraps around the nerve cells of your brain. That's called Alzheimer's disease, right? So that mechanism turns out to be incredibly important, and it only occurs during stages 3, 4, and of sleep, which, by the way, is the one that's not well measured by the rings and by the trackers out there, right? So you have to kind of think through all of that. And the key factor that I would say for people, and this is what we get back to in the book, is, don't put hurdles in the way of your sleep. And so hurdles are things like having an inconsistent bedtime or rise time, more importantly. Yeah, let me correct that. It's more important for you to wake up at the same time of the day than it is to go to bed at the same time every day. Okay, let me explain why. So when you wake up in the morning, this sets a timer for your brain to produce melatonin at night. And so if your wake up time is variable, then your melatonin at night becomes variable. But if your wake up time is consistent, then your melatonin at night is consistent. And this comes into play when people say, I want to sleep in on the weekends, right? Don't, okay? It's a terrible idea. Get your butt out of bed on Saturday and Sunday.
So if you have to work late and you stay up late, it's still better to get up early and just
absolutely it is.
Have a shorter sleep.
Absolutely. Up to, I would say, 5.5 hours. If anything less than 5.5 hours, you really can't drive a car well, and that is just dangerous. So I would say that. But yeah, I would rather you get up at the right time, at your same time, and get 5.5 hours to 6 hours of sleep, than pushing that, because it does more circadian damage than you might imagine.
So one thing about breathing. So I've been trying like these little things you put on your nose and it seems to pull.
Yeah, the breathe right strips.
The breathe right strip. Is that helpful?
Great question. So yes and no. So here's the thing. I have kind of oily skin. And so when I use those breathe rights, like halfway through the night, they seem to like migrate. And then they're like, I wake up and it's like across my eyeball or something like crazy like that. So they don't work great for me, but there is a company that makes an internal nasal dilator. So it's something that actually goes inside the nostrils. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy. So I use this thing. It's called Mute, M-U-T-E. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. Mute Snoring. People should look it up. It's a great product. It's like $15. But what's interesting about it is if you put it in your nose, in 30 seconds, you can't feel it any longer. And it works. Like snoring is gone. It's incredible. Every time I drink alcohol, my wife's like, go put your nose thingy in. So if I do that, then I'm fine. That helps with snoring. Weight loss can help with snoring. I mean, you're a pretty lean guy, so weight loss probably isn't in your picture for snoring. But for folks out there who might be a little bit on the larger side, for every about 25 pounds, we see a significant decibel reduction in in the snore itself. So, well, 25 pounds to 5% of your body weight, right? So, for a 200-pound person, if you lost 10 pounds, you'd probably drop about 30 decibels, which would make your partner thrilled. Trust me.
Right. Yeah, that would
Others,
be.
yeah.
No, that would
I
be
was just
good.
going to say, other snoring things that I teach people all the time is raise the head of the bed. That can be helpful, pull gravity out of the equation. Um, and then also, you really do need to listen to see if the person has sleep apnea. You really would be remiss if you're lying next to somebody and they're snoring, and you hear brief pauses in their snoring, or you hear them stop breathing for any period of time. You need to have them do the sleep test we were just talking about, because that would be sleep apnea. And a lot of it, look, I'd rather you know and find out that it's mild and say, hey, maybe I don't feel like treating it. But once you hit into the, higher end of mild and into the moderate and severe range, it's affecting your life. Like I can assure you of that. Your temper is worse, your emotionality is worse, your performance in every area you can imagine will be worse. So it's worth getting it fixed if that's what you got.
So the Oura Ring tracks latency, and it seems to get upset if your latency is like less than. No, it likes
8
it
hours.
like between 50, the latency for when you fall asleep, between
Oh
15
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
30 minutes. Is
Mhm.
latency actually important?
So here's the deal: is I think a lot of people think about latency like too much, right? And by the way, latency also has to do with another factor that most people don't even think about, which is called your chronotype. So everybody has a genetic chronotype, which is kind of early bird versus night owl, right? And so here's what happens: is if you're a night owl and you get in bed at 9 o'clock, guess what? Your latency is going to be a long time because your body isn't designed that way, right? Or if you're an early bird and you have to sleep in right till noon, you'll never be able to do it. So there is a genetic component to latency that everyone, number one, if you sleep within your chronotypical kind of swim lane, if you will, then you're do much better. For folks out there who want to know what their chronotype is, if you go to chronoquiz.com, full disclosure, that is my website. I have created it. It is a quiz that will teach you what your chronotype is and give you all kinds of free information. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just good old information that I think you'll enjoy. So once you know your chronotype, I think that has a lot to do with latency. But to be fair, like you need runway to land the plane. You know what I mean? Like you need time. Sleep's not an on-off switch. It's more like slowly pulling your foot off the gas and slowly putting your foot on the brake. I think between 15 and 30 minutes is pretty normal for most people.
Right. So if we wake up in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
what is the best way to get back to sleep?
Yep. So this is the number one question that I get asked. It's interesting. So number one, I have a YouTube video on this very question. So if you don't get all of it now, rewind, listen to it again. And then if you still don't get all of it, I do have a video on this so you can check it out. So this is going to take me about 2 minutes to get through this explanation. I'm rolling up my sleeves and I'm getting ready to go. So your core body temperature rises till it hits a peak every night around 10:30 at night. Then it begins to fall. When that core body temperature falls, that's a signal to your brain to release melatonin into the system. So remember, melatonin is kind of that key that starts the engine for sleep. It's not the only thing that you need, but you ain't sleeping if you ain't got no melatonin, right? So now your core body temperature continues to drop, 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 drop. At some point in time in the night, your temperature has got to go back up. Otherwise, you go hypothermic and you die, right? That period of time is usually between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning, which, by the way, everybody who's listening is going to say, you know what? That's the time that I wake up. So, to be clear, every person on earth wakes up between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Here's the thing: 99% of them fall back asleep, right? They don't even realize that they were up. They kind of startle and then roll over and they kind of go back to sleep. But there is a select group of people, my patients, who that's the territory. That's the problem is I'm having a hard time falling back to sleep, Michael. What do I do here? Right? So there's a couple things you want to think about. So number one, don't go pee. Yes, you heard that correctly. Do not go use the restroom. Oh my God, Dr. Breus, what are you talking about? Why would I not go use the restroom? Because here's what really happens is most people, when they wake up in the middle of the night, they say, well, I'm up. I might as well see if I need to go to the bathroom. Bad idea. There's one metric that everybody needs to know is you want a heart rate of 60 or below in order to enter into a state of unconsciousness. Guess what happens to your heart rate when you go from a lying position to a seated position to a standing position and you walk across the room? Your heart rate gets above 60. So then when you go to the bathroom, which by the way, if you flip on the light, you just told your brain it was morning and now it's no longer producing melatonin. Now you have to come back and lower your heart rate. So number one, I want to be super clear. If you got to go, please go pee. But if you're thinking, hey, why not? It's a terrible idea because now you have two problems. You got a heart rate problem and a sleep problem. If you do have to go to the bathroom, I would argue put some strategically placed night lights along the way so that you don't have to turn on any lights and also so you're safe and don't knock into any walls. When you get back into bed, the second thing I don't want you to do is look at the clock, okay? Please don't look at the clock. I know you're going to no matter what I say right now, okay? But that is true. It would be great if you didn't. Because here's what happens is you instantly do the mental math and you say, oh, crap. Here we are again. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Number one, your anxiety goes through the roof, which means your heart rate goes through the roof. Remember the metric, 60 or below. So you getting upset by looking at the clock is really stupid because you're going in the wrong direction if you're trying to get back to sleep. What you're thinking in your head is, oh, I want to know what time it is. Who cares what time it is? If it's still dark, close your eyes. All right. Now, I'm not so stupid as to think that people aren't going to do this. So they do it and now they're pissed off. Okay, great. So you've gone to the bathroom even though I told you not to. Now you've looked at the clock even though I've told you not to, right? You're anxious and you're angry. All right, what am I going to do? So here's what you're going to do is you're going to start to use a breathing technique. Because what I have to do now is I have to get you away from what I call monkey mind, which is you start thinking about things, right? So, oh, what did I do today? What do I need to do tomorrow? What's on the grocery list? Oh, my business is failing. Oh, my marriage is on the rocks. And you just now you're never going to sleep because your heart rate is too high. Remember, the metric is 60 or below. Now, some of our audience members are going to say, well, wait a second, my heart rate never gets below 60 because I have hypertension. I get it. All I'm talking about is I'm talking about a significant drop in heart rate to a point where it would be the lowest of the night, right? So anyway, we've got to fix this. We've got to make it so that you don't have monkey mind and we have to lower your heart rate. So there's a breathing technique called 4-7-8 breathing. We talk about it in the book. I give a whole explanation of it, but it was actually developed by a guy by the name of Dr. Andrew Weil. So folks may remember Dr. Andrew Weil was one of the very first naturalistic doctors who was interested in holistic medicine, longevity, Harvard trained, has an institute in Arizona, super bright guy, right? So what he was doing is he's actually working with the Navy SEALs. And when you're a sniper and you're shooting downrange, if your heart is beating too fast, you can change the trajectory of the bullet. Okay, so you become less accurate. So his job was to teach them a breathing technique to lower their heart rate below 60 so they could fire in between heartbeats, right? Because they can do that pretty quickly. We don't really care about that part of the story, but what we do care about is that they drop them below 60. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You slowly breathe in for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 7, and then you breathe out for a count of 8. I'm going to tell you something. When I first started doing this, I couldn't hold my breath that long, and I certainly couldn't expel my breath that long. So I had to do 4, 5, 6 breathing. Okay, so and then I graduated from 4, 5, 6 to 4, 7, 8. Let me explain what it's doing. Most people, turns out, are shallow breathers. This is where the breathe part in the book comes in because I learned a lot about it at that point in time when I was doing the research. So most people only breathe shallow, so they only use half of their lung. So our bodies have lungs the size that they are because the entire lung needs to be used to distribute oxygen all over the body. So when you only use half the lung, you need to use, your heart has to beat twice as fast. right, to distribute that less amount of volume of oxygen. This is a basic property of physics, okay? So you're saying, okay, Michael, I get it. So we need to do that. So 4 is when you breathe in, you're actually extending your lung almost completely. 7, you hold, and now you use up all the oxygen. And then 8, you completely dispel and get every bit of carbon dioxide out. Now, when the new breath comes in, it's all super fresh, clean air, right? And it's not like a tough breath, and you're not going really hard. It's more a slow, relaxed breath in, a relaxed hold, and then a relaxed release. You want to do 10 to 12 cycles of this, okay? In order, and it'll take you about 20 seconds to get through each cycle. So we're talking about 3 minutes of breathing here, right? But what happens is it almost immediately dumps your heart rate below 60. So now we're in a much better place, right? Because we've got your breathing. And by the way, you can't think of anything while you're counting. So that's part of the trick of the 4-7-8 breathing. And so what I do is I keep my hands as small fists. And then when I go through one cycle, 4-7-8, I stick out a finger. Then a second cycle, I stick out a finger until I get to 10 fingers out. Then I know I've done 10 cycles, right? And if I'm still feeling a little bit anxious, then I do a new version of counting sheep where I count backwards from 300 by threes, okay? It is mathematically so complicated, you cannot think of anything else, and it is so damn boring, and your heart rate is already low. It gives a lot of opportunity for the natural sleep process to come in, take over, and allow you to fall asleep, okay? Now, let's say you're in that spot, but you haven't fallen back asleep. You've tried all the stuff. You're kind of, well, Michael, I don't know. There's something out there, there's a practice called yoga nidra, right? It's been around for thousands of years. In science, we call it non-sleep deep rest. So what is it? It's lying quiescent or in a relaxed state in the dark, no sound, just relaxing. It turns out it's rejuvenative. I mean, it's not like sleep, but it's worth about 20-25% of sleep. So like if you do that for an hour, it's probably worth about 20-25 minutes of sleep, right? So take some solace in the fact that just lying there in this nice relaxed state where you've done your 4-7-8 breathing, you're actually doing something good for your body. So don't worry so much. And the final thing I tell people all the time is sometimes you just have to accept it. Like sometimes your body just doesn't need to sleep. Like it's okay if you woke up at 4:30 in the morning and you're just wide awake. Like, okay, get out of bed. Like the world is not going to come to an end, right? If this happens, right? Like this has happened to you many times in the past, right? People are like, oh my God, I got a meeting. You're fine. Like relax. Okay. Like this is because what happens is in the middle of the night, we're not good at emotionally regulating. And so in the middle of the night, everything seems awful. And so what I do is, as an example, I was traveling because of the book, and I was staying at a hotel. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard this like this kind of weird creaking kind of noise in the hotel, right? And it kind of startled me and woke me up. And then I was like, and so I said to myself, like, this is a perfect opportunity to get upset, right? Like, oh my gosh, this noise woke me up, and somebody trying to break into my room, and what's going on with the hotel? You know, like you can really spiral pretty quickly at 3 o'clock in the morning. So what did I say to myself? I said, oh, you know what? That's really good. This is an older building. And so it's just, kind of settling in. I think I'm going to settle back in and go to sleep. And that's what I did, right? It's just, so number one, it's not like the building was coming down. There's not like anybody's going to come into my room. Like it's like all of those things that you think are going to happen aren't really going to happen. So some level of acceptance of what your situation is also, again, lowers your stress, which lowers your heartbeat, which then allows the natural sleep process to take back over. It really, really is in the middle of the night, all about your heart rate.
If we don't get good sleep, is it okay to nap during the day to catch up?
Great question. Only if you don't have insomnia. I'm a big fan of the nap, but if you don't sleep well at night, you really should not nap during the day because you're taking away from the sleep drive that's in your system, and it makes it much more difficult for you to fall asleep that night. So if you already don't sleep well, napping is out. But I love napping on Saturdays when I'm watching golf because they talk like this. They talk really softly.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of touched on sleep and aging, and so
Mhm.
the brain waves are changing, or they're just becoming,
Yeah.
the amplitude is becoming less.
The
Is it?
amp, yeah, the amplitude is shrinking. That's correct. They're still having them, but the amplitude is less. And sleep gets weird as we get older for several different reasons. Another one is that we don't have as much fat in our skin, like subcutaneous fat, and so our ability to regulate our temperature becomes quite variable. And remember, sleep follows your core body temperature cycle. So that becomes a big thing. And then also, to be fair, as we get older, we can become more medically infirm. We're on more medications. We can have more diseases. We can have more problems, and all of that can affect sleep as well.
Okay. Is there anything we can do? I don't know. How would older people try to improve their sleep?
Oh, that's easy. So number one, consistency. Wake up at the same time, 7 days a week. I think I kind of beat that horse, but you know what I'm talking about. Number two, the two other big things that I think people can do that they don't really think about have to do with caffeine and alcohol. So bottom line, neither one of them is good for sleep. And as we get older, we really need our sleep. If I had to choose between the two, you're going to find this interesting. I think alcohol is worse for sleep than caffeine as we get older. Let me explain. As we get older, like I said, we don't have the strength or the amplitude of that stage 3, 4 sleep, which is one where that scoops out those proteins for Alzheimer's. Alcohol basically obliterates stage 3, 4 sleep. Caffeine does not. Caffeine might make it difficult for you to fall asleep, but caffeine does not have nearly the effects on stage 3, 4 sleep that alcohol has. And as a 55-year-old, I want to stay away from alcohol anywhere close to bedtime. Now, does that mean I can't have a beer during the day while I'm watching a football game? No, of course, have a beer. I don't care. But what you really don't want to do is you don't want to have a lot of alcohol just before bed. What's a lot of alcohol? What I tell people all the time is anything over 2 drinks is absolutely going to have an effect on your sleep. So what I tell people is have 1 glass of alcohol, 1 glass of water, 1 glass of alcohol, 1 glass of water, wait 3 hours, go to bed. Right. So you would time it based on when is your normal bedtime. So if your normal bedtime is 11, then you count back 3 hours, then you can figure out if you want to drink, like you want to go to a party, you want to go to a cocktail party, whatever, holiday party, whatever. That's the kind of thing you could do. That's really, I would say, probably the best strategy. But to be clear, if you could take alcohol out of your life, your sleep will get much better. Period. End of story. Caffeine is, also one of those factors. And a lot of people, especially in my age group and older, we just drink a lot of coffee. We're used to it. We like the taste of it. It's been around for a long time. It's always been at work, that kind of thing. And so that you end up just drinking a lot of coffee and having things that have caffeine in them. And what you don't realize is the half-life of caffeine. So half of the caffeine to get out of your system takes 8 hours. So if you drink 5 cups of coffee, right, which would be about 400 or so milligrams, depending upon the coffee and how large it is and all that kind of stuff, right? And you finished your last cup of coffee at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then at 10 o'clock, you'd still have 200 milligrams running around in your head because it's only half out,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where the problem comes in, right? And as we get older, we can become more caffeine sensitive. So it's not that we taste it any differently, and it doesn't have any physical different effects on us, but it definitely affects our sleep differently because it's still in our system. So as we age, our ability to metabolize slows down, right? And so again, we just keep adding more caffeine into the system that's very slow metabolism. It's not going to be great for sleep, as is the same for alcohol. So like I said, these are the kind of the 1-2 punch that as we get older, we really just want to take them out. You really want to just stick with hydration in terms of water. Now I'm not saying don't have a cup of coffee in the morning. Like if you want to have a cup of coffee or two in the morning, I don't think I care. But if you could stop all caffeine by 10 a.m., you'd be in much better shape from a sleep perspective. And like I said, if you could take out alcohol altogether, I think you would really see a significant improvement in the quality of your sleep. And also, it's kind of funny because when I tell people, hey, you should consider removing alcohol, everybody freaks out. So I tell them, I said, look, number one, try it for 2 weeks. If you don't like it and it doesn't have an effect on you, then it doesn't have an effect on you. But number two, why is it bothering you so much? Should probably ask yourself that question. Like, why is it so difficult to not have a glass of wine or two glasses of, two whiskeys at night? Like, that should be telling you something. If that's your coping mechanism, it's probably not healthy in the long run, for it to be like that. You might want to think about that.
Interesting. Yes. So it was actually my Oura ring that has pushed me to reduce
There
alcohol
you go.
because you can see the impact of it.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Especially on these trackers. These trackers are super sensitive because they track temperature, and alcohol has a hyperemetic and then a hypoemetic effect. So at first it actually increases your body temp, or no, it decreases your body temperature first, and then it increases it in the middle of the night.
okay. And I have not heard the 10 a.m. for alcohol. I've heard for coffee. I thought it was like 2 p.m. or something
Well,
like that.
again, how good do you want it to be? Right? Run the experiment, right?
Yeah.
Stop at 2, see how your sleep is. Stop at 10. I can assure you your sleep will be better.
Interesting. Yeah. So we did talk about the stages of sleep. So we have like
Yeah.
REM, and we have deep sleep, and we have light
Mm-hmm.
sleep, right?
Yep.
What happens in light sleep? Because most of my time seems to be in light sleep, and I have this idea of what happens in REM and deep, but light sleep,
Yep.
what does it achieve?
So not much. And so light sleep is usually a buffer between deep and REM. There's a few things that happen. There are these things called K complexes and these things called spindles that happen with your brain. And there's some thought that these have to do with beginnings of memory consolidation and maybe sending a few recovery signals to different parts of the body. Stage 1 sleep is almost nothing. It's transitory. It's basically bringing you from wake into sleep. May last 2 or 3 minutes. Stage 2 represents the bulk of the night. And like I said, it's mostly spindles and K complexes. And it's kind of setting the stage for stage 3, 4 to do the physical restoration, and for REM to do your mental restoration, is what I would argue.
Right. And stage 4 is the physical. That's when it's cleaning up the
Yep,
proteins. And stage 3
exactly.
is the dreaming.
We actually put them together. So we actually
Oh,
now consider stage 3 and 4 as a single stage. We call it N3 now,
interesting.
technically.
So
Mhm.
do you dream in stage 4 as well as stage 3?
Great question. Great question. So you can dream in any stage of sleep, but you're most likely to be dreaming in REM sleep. When we wake people up 80% of the time, if they're dreaming, they're in REM sleep. But think about it. If you've ever been in class, or you've ever been like on the bus and you fell asleep and you went into a dream, you probably didn't get into REM sleep, but you probably were dreaming.
Okay. So thinking about, so are there any supplements? So if we
Hmm.
want to try and improve our sleep, perhaps, I
Sure.
mean, accepting what you said about the
Hmm.
the Oura ring
I get this question all the time.
not giving
Huh?
accurate uh, estimation of your stages in any case. But suppose we wanted
Yep.
to try and improve our sleep
Yeah,
quality, any supplements that would
absolutely.
help?
No.
No.
Let me explain. So
Yes.
the way I feel about it is, I think that while I understand the question, I'm not convinced that that's the right question to ask. The right question is, what are my deficiencies? So what I tell people is, go get blood work done. If you are deficient in iron, if you are deficient in magnesium, if you are deficient in melatonin, and if you are deficient in vitamin D, any one of those 3 or 4 rather, fix. If you fix them, let's see if you still have a sleep problem. Okay. Those are all things that are requirements for the body. Like, to be clear, nobody has a deficiency in ashwagandha. Okay. Nobody has a deficiency in passion flower. Nobody has a deficiency in valerian root. Okay. This body works really well when it's just well maintained. And when it's got the right amount of iron, the right amount of magnesium, the right amount of vitamin D, and the right amount of melatonin in it, guess what? It'll probably work just fine. So I'm not really a big fan of taking a bunch of supplements to, quote, improve your sleep when we don't even know why your sleep is not of highest quality. My argument would be, do some blood work and let's see what you're deficient in, and let's get all of those deficiencies fixed. And then let's see how your body operates. Because, by the way, by fixing your magnesium, vitamin D, and iron deficiencies, a whole lot of other things are going to go much better in your system than they would have if you just added ashwagandha. or valerian or whatever.
How melatonin? How do we fix melatonin? Because the others, okay, you can supplement with actually, or you could change your diet. But how do we fix melatonin?
So the good news is most people don't actually need a melatonin fix. So a lot of people, what the problem is that they feel like their melatonin is not occurring at the right time. And remember, that has to do with what time they wake up. From melatonin, there are supplements that you can take for melatonin that are exogenous pills. By the way, here in the United States, you can walk into any drugstore anywhere and buy it. But almost everywhere else in the world, it's by prescription only because melatonin is a hormone. Also, by the way, in Europe, it's used as birth control. Yes, you heard me say that correctly. It's used as birth control. And just to be clear, melatonin affects diabetes medication, birth control medication, antidepressant medication, and blood pressure medication. It's a circadian pacemaker, so it'll change the effectiveness of all those drugs. So melatonin is not something that I tell people that they should be utilizing unless they're under a doctor's orders. There are probably 4 cases where melatonin makes sense. So jet lag temporarily, shift workers, something called REM behavior disorder, and then for people who have a melatonin deficiency. Now, to be clear, once you hit about 55 to 60, many people do slow in their melatonin production. So it's probably something that would be worthwhile to see, because if you have low melatonin production, then you could take melatonin. The big problem, though, is all the melatonin that's out there and available, at least here in the US, we don't know if what's in the bottle is what's on the label. They did a big study and they pulled 30 different brands off the shelf, and not one of them was correct. So the only one I like here in the US is called Herbatonin. It's the only one I know that is 100% organic. I have no connection with the company. I know the guys, though. They do a really good job.
Interesting. Yeah, because melatonin, well, hormones in general, like the amount you have is so small that that taking exogenous can kind of overwhelm it, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I don't tell people to take melatonin.
Right. Although I heard like mitochondria take mitochondria use melatonin as an antioxidant.
As an antioxidant. That's correct. So melatonin is produced in 2 places. It's in the pineal and it's also in the gut. And 80% of your melatonin is actually made in your gut, and it's used as an antioxidant that goes throughout your body. So it's complex. Like, that's a complicated discussion, which, to be fair, I don't have a lot of background in. But what I can tell you is I know a lot about the pineal gland melatonin, but not the other.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That was a diversion. We won't go into that.
That's okay.
Okay, Dr. Breus, thank you so much. So, your book it was released yesterday, so it's on
absolutely.
Amazon and I guess everywhere else.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, the goal here is I want people to have a starting line for wellness. If it's complicated, if you don't know what to do, look, this is an easy thing. It doesn't cost anything. I mean, the book costs something, but other than that, like, you don't have to buy any equipment to breathe. You don't have to buy any equipment to hydrate or sleep, or you already have it. So I think this is a great place for people if they're, becoming wellness curious, or, they're just getting interested in longevity. What I can tell you is if you sleep, if you hydrate, and you breathe, you will 100% live longer. No question about it.
Excellent. And on that note, so people can also follow your work at SleepDoctor and Chronoquiz.com.
Chronoquiz.com. And then also my website is thesleepdoctor.com, and I'm the Sleep Doctor on all the socials. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I don't know what other ones there are.
Okay.
TikTok.
Excellent. TikTok. So
right.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been great talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.